Welcome to the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast. I'm Sean Borstrock. On this episode, I'm joined by Gemma Metheringham. After working in the fashion industry for over 30 years, Gemma started The Elephant in My Wardrobe in 2020. She did this to challenge overconsumption and throwaway fashion. The conversation started there, led to her to quit a job, complete an MA in Fashion Futures, and start a PhD. Her research explores the future of the second-hand fashion market and how it might reduce fashion's environmental impact. Committed to sharing what she's learning, Gemma writes, lectures, upcycles, mends for friends, and advocates for radical consumerism and asks, is fashion's future second-hand? Gemma Metheringham, welcome to the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast.
Hi, nice to be here.
So I want to start, as I always do, it's always the same kind of conversation at the beginning, by asking the person I'm chatting with to tell me a bit about them, about their kind of career trajectory and where they got from kind of the starting point of a career to where you are today.
Well, as you said, my name's Gemma, but nowadays mostly people know me as you that elephant woman or something, because I have an Instagram feed called The Elephant in My Wardrobe, which I started in 2020. I worked in fashion for like a really long time. I think I was one of those annoying kids that just would only wear what I wanted to wear. I've always loved clothes, and I was very lucky. I trained as a designer and I worked as a creative director in the fashion industry for over 30 years. But I think sort of by mid-2000s, early 2000s, it just started to not feel quite right to me. And you could feel the industry shifting, you know, rather than it being about making clothes that were really beautiful that people wanted to wear, it started to become much more about your marketing strategy. You know, how are you going to sell stuff to people, Gem? How are you going to promote it to people? What kind of discounting are you going to do? And as the creative director, you know, yeah, I was super lucky. I was on the board. So you get a lot more of those questions. And it was always about how are we going to grow this? And I was working at Karen Millen at the time, and I just started to say to the board, which is probably not a good career move really, but you know, like, I feel like the market is becoming oversaturated. I feel like people have got all of the things they want. I don't see much natural growth in the market. And then it becomes about, you know, how are you going to invent something that people must have? And I found that quite difficult, if I'm honest. I found it a bit depressing. I found it a bit sort of bit soul destroying. So I left, and then in the end, I left Karen Millen partly for that reason. I went to Next. I ran a project at Next called Label Mix, and the premise behind that was actually to support and encourage emerging and establishing designers in the UK. I do a lot of work with Graduate Fashion Week. I do a lot of mentoring of graduates. It's really difficult as as a young designer to start your own business. So I wanted to help them. And we did collaborations with small designers. It was really great. I got to meet lots of amazing people. We got to really help some people with their businesses. And the more I talked to them, and I set up a very sort of small team, and the more I talked to these young designers and the more I talked to my team, the more they were challenging about sustainability. You know, they were worrying about it. And so when it was COVID, I set up The Elephant in My Wardrobe to challenge, sort of think about sustainability, think about throwaway consumption. Sorry, Sean, this is really long, but bear with me. I'm nearly done. I set up The Elephant in My Wardrobe to think about throwaway consumption, you know, to sort of think about my relationship with fashion, the way I was consuming fashion. And it was very personal at that point. And the conversations I started having, I met all these amazing people, I started having all these conversations, led me to quit my job, go back to college, do an MA in Fashion Futures at London College of Fashion. And I became sort of obsessed with the second-hand market and how the second-hand market, which is something that I've always loved all through my career, and I've always shopped for inspiration and personally, how can the second-hand market make the fashion industry more sustainable, or can it? And that was what I wrote my dissertation on. I didn't find the answer. I really wanted to find the answer, but I didn't find the answer. So then I decided to carry on, and I'm now doing a PhD at Nottingham Trent, sort of looking at the future of the second-hand market.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing about research is that you never find the answer.
I know. I've only just learned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's part of the point, is that it's a journey, and hopefully it's not going to be a journey, that ends. Because you'd be writing books, Yeah,
Okay.
lots of stuff. So interesting that you went from kind of huge amounts of production and consumption to focusing on secondhand and focusing on the reason why people buy things. Do you have an answer as to why people buy things? Is it because, like you were saying, that when you were at Karen Millen, for example, there was a strategy to try and find ways to produce the must-have thing?
I think it's really complicated, isn't it? I mean, I have read some sort of books about consumption and consumerism. I actually don't like the term consumer.
Right.
I resent being, the way we have become consumers. We were citizens. I mean, originally we were subjects and slaves, weren't we? But, we made it to being citizens, and now all of a sudden we've become consumers, and that is the thing that defines us. I mean, I think the reason we consume stuff is really complicated, isn't it? There's stuff we need. I think we're sort of encouraged to want things as well, aren't we? I mean, we are particularly, I feel like, Sean, it's really interesting because I think we've gone through this sort of monumental change curve recently, with iPhones, with social media, with the way we're interacting with the world. And we are marketed to 24/7 now, aren't we? And we are told that we need things. And some of the textbooks I read about consumerism, they were quite old. Seminal works, and they talk a lot about televisions coming into people's living rooms, and we became much more dissatisfied as people generally when we started to be able to watch the TV and sort of see stuff there and see a life that you don't have, because prior to that you'd really only seen people whose lives were like yours. And then you put social media in there and you say wow, and this is all the stuff you don't have as well, and you say, and you could just buy it kind of now. So there's definitely all the marketing. And then I also think there is a sort of level of insecurity that the fashion industry clearly plays off, doesn't it? That, you're not cool enough, you're not thin enough, you're not, I don't know, whatever it is enough. And if you buy this frock, miraculously, you'll be this.
You'll be that. Yeah, this or that.
Yeah.
And that level of aspiration that's created by these brands. And I mean, the branding word is not one that I, like you with consumer, I don't like the word brand. I think, everybody talks about their brand, and I think, but what does that actually mean? It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it might have done, when you were herding cattle, but it's such a weird...
Yeah, well, it's sort of become everything, hasn't it? Because actually, you're your own brand now, aren't you? You, Sean, you're a brand, and I'm, what is that? Yeah. And I don't necessarily want to be consistent enough to be a brand, actually.
Yeah, because it lacks any personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me more about the elephant in my wardrobe, because that's so interesting, just in terms of all the work you're doing you're mining for information. A lot of it is not that public.
Yeah, I think the elephant in my wardrobe, because it started as this personal thing, I started sort of asking myself questions, really, because for me, I'd always loved fashion, loved it, I clock what everybody's wearing, and I can't remember people's names. I can't actually remember where I've met them, but I'd probably tell you what they were wearing on the day that I met them. If it was interesting, I might even have gone home and I'd looked it up to see what it was. So I've always been fascinated by how people project themselves, how they dress, kind of by fashion, but maybe not fashion as we know it now. Maybe that's something we can come back to, because I think fashion is related to culture. It's related to how you live your life. It isn't a micro trend for an off-the-shoulder top. It's how you project yourself in the world. So for me, I think the elephant in my wardrobe, I felt like when I started it, I'd sort of fallen out of love with fashion, and I can only describe it a little bit as like a breakup.
Right.
It was quite an emotional thing for me because it had defined me. It's my career, it's my hobby, it's my passion, it's this thing I love. And I really don't like it. The industry is entirely predicated on growth no matter what. I'm really uncomfortable about it. It's sort of my personal values and the thing that I love are kind of not in alignment. And so I just started asking questions because I think it's really, really difficult to be a sustainable consumer. How do you know? How do I know if a regenerative cotton t-shirt is better than a part recycled polyester t-shirt? Actually, from a longevity, use, price, how it's made, have I got the time to even be bothered to find out? You know, it's so untransparent. So I use it as a vehicle to ask questions. And then obviously, as I've started researching, it's become a great way to ask questions that help my thinking. And I guess there's one other thing for me about it's really brilliant. I loved working with other people. I really loved being part of a design team. I never sat in an office. I always sat in a design studio full of people. I like talking to people. Researching can be quite lonely. And I think if anybody's thinking about a career in research, you know, it's quite a lonely thing. So for me, it's also somewhere where I can say, hey, do you know what? I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Does that bother you as well? And so it's a sort of way that I can articulate what I'm thinking and maybe find out what other people think.
Yeah, I mean, that's very apparent because I'm obviously I follow you. I'm following your not buying for 90 days.
Yeah.
But you know, asking those questions they're important questions. What is the interaction with your followers?
Well, it's brilliant. I mean, I really feel like I've got this community, and I know there's a lot of critique, isn't there, of social media? It's a bad thing, you know, but I've made friends, and I consider them to be friends in Scotland, in Canada, in Australia. People send me things. They send me people that they think I'd be interested in. And they also get into their own conversations. You know, I do have posts that have hundreds of comments.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, I try to reply to everybody because I think that's polite. And, you know, I'm interested in what they're saying and it's good to have the conversation. But actually, there's conversations going on that I am nothing to do with on there, you know, where people are sort of feeding information and swapping things and talking about things. And I sort of think people say it's a bit of a resource for them as well, because this is kind of odd, okay, but I asked about toothpaste. I cut my toothpaste in half and I clean out the toothpaste, and I do that because I don't want to waste anything anymore. I think waste is like one of the biggest things that we as people could do to help be more sustainable. But then somebody said to me, if you do that, Gem, it won't get recycled because it's too difficult to recycle. And I'm like, oh my God, why? Because I hate plastic even more, and like, what am I going to do about plastic? So I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And I had so many people answer me, you know, people who run waste disposal businesses and people who've worked in recycling and people telling me what to do. And then I think for other people, you know, people messaged me and said, thanks for all that information because I do that too. And now I'm going to do this. And so I think it's just a place to have conversations, really.
But also implement change.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the important thing, because it's not only about the conversation, it's about the impact you are having on people to influence change, positive change.
Well, I think for me, again, the thing we've all got to do is just kind of wake up and ask some questions. Yeah. And I think this last period in, you know, I mean, I think people are going to look back at this last 20 years. I mean, people are going to, this iPhone age, this technology age, they're going to look back and it's going to be a thing, you know, there's going to be people because most academic research looks back, doesn't it? There's going to be people studying this. There's going to be a shed load of dissertations written about this period. But I think it's sort of taken away our questioning time. You know, everything's so quick, one-click shopping, do this. Everybody's so busy. We're, oh my God, we're rushed. We don't ask any questions. And I think the biggest single thing we could all do is just, oh, wait a minute. Is that really what I want to do? And if you really do want to do it for all the right reasons, do it. But don't just do it because you saw this thing that pinged up on your phone. And
no, and so there's so many things in kind of what you've just said and the previous comment around kind of manufacture, thinking about what you're buying, thinking about the impact of what you're buying. So not just the purchase, but what that purchase does in the long term. But fashion is, I mean, you still love fashion, we still love fashion, but it's predicated on consumption and profit for the company. So somebody might be producing this amazing, whatever it is, dress or t-shirt or trousers, but ultimately for that person producing it, the ultimate aim is to make money on it. They're not producing it for free. So their sourcing mechanism will be to find, more likely than not, the cheapest way of producing it. So they might go to China to source, I don't know, if it's crystals, source crystals from China rather than going to Czechoslovakia. If it's cotton, and cotton, as you know better than anybody, is graded. Not all 100% cotton is good cotton. Not all organic cotton is good cotton. But where would you source it? Do you go to India? Do you go to China? Wherever. All of those steps are kind of cost, steps in cost, but also steps in profit.
Yeah.
How do we change the mind of the manufacturers or the designers to say, well, reduce the profitability. You don't need that 600, 700, 800% markup or more, depending on what you're buying. A little bit less, stay closer to home, don't make so much.
Well,
there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot in there, isn't there? I mean, I think ultimately, it's probably not the designer's mind you need to change. It's probably the CFO and the CEO or whoever he is. It's the people on the board with those spreadsheets, who are looking for the red bits and, want to see the growth.
Yeah.
Because they're the people who are saying, look, this year, you guys, you've got to grow by 5%. And you say, from where? In the way of the world, the way people are feeling. So I think that's the first thing. I think designers, quite often to me, they get a lot of stick. Design for emotional durability, design longer lasting product. They're working in most companies, they're working to a brief that somebody else sets them. And I don't think they have so much say. Who knows? I might be being kind to designers because I'm one, but I think mostly they just like to design nice products. And, but I also think, it's business, isn't it? The more I think about it, the more problems I have with kind of how business models are constructed. I think businesses have become generally quite greedy. I think, we are in, what do people call it? They call it like late stage capitalism. I think it's all about profitability and growing your profits. Do businesses, I wish I should have looked it up actually before I came, Sean, but if you look up the profits that Louis Vuitton make, if you look up the profits that Zara make, do you need to make that much profit? And I think going back to our other conversation...
Well, 37 billion turnover, but Vuitton will be close to the trillion mark.
Yeah, and the profits, but the profit percent, the profit numbers. So fine, that's
57%.
It's enormous, it's extraordinary. Yeah. And then I also think the other thing you have to factor into the costs, it isn't just about sourcing cheaper. They've got to support these bloody enormous marketing budgets. That's a really massive difference in terms of in the time that I was working, just how much that's changed. Marketing used to be some nice pages in Vogue, you'd have some posters, you'd do your catwalk show. Now, if you're a big brand, you're doing all of those shows all around the world. The excess of it, I think, is quite mind-blowing. You are constantly marketing on social media. You are shooting what percentage of that garment's price are you having to sort of inflate or add in to still make your enormous profits and support that marketing budget?
And the lifestyles. Because that's, what we've seen over the past probably maybe even 20 years is this growing chasm between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's continuing to grow, and the people who have got the money continue to consume like there's no tomorrow. And even if you're a millionaire, which is not that much money anymore, but millionaires are spending huge amounts of money on, whether it's travel, whether it's fashion, these luxury brands, 10 grand on a handbag, and creating this huge divide. Which is also unhelpful. So the profit is not only about the marketing, but it's also about the lifestyles that they're looking to, I suppose, perpetuate for themselves.
Well, they're looking to perpetuate, and then we're looking to aspire to, aren't we? We're supposed to look up at these people and think, well, I'd like a little bit of that. And, that's just not real. And I suppose, from my perspective, I don't actually find a lot of it aspirational either. I don't think, I thought the Met Gala was, I didn't really look at a lot of it, but because I objected to it on principle, but the bits I see, it's just excessive. And I don't think that's fashion. I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's creatively interesting. I just think it's about sort of...
show off.
Yeah.
It's a show. It's performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And also the Gucci show apparently cost $10 million to set that up in New York, either $5 or $10 million just for a 7-minute or 12-minute runway. $10 million could be so, much better spent somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, I suppose it all drives itself, doesn't it? Because how much more stuff do you have to sell to cover the cost of that 7, so you're constantly sort of over-egging the pudding, I think is the phrase. You're constantly sort of doing more, aren't you?
But so going to the luxury point now, perfectly, kind of a perfect kind of hook, is all of that stuff luxury? All of this kind of, all of the Gucci show, for example, they tout themselves as being a luxury brand, as do many others. I mean, is that luxury to you?
I don't know. I don't actually sort of know what luxury is anymore. I mean, and I don't necessarily actually, if I'm honest, you sort of think back about the history of it. It's probably never been that nice, has it? This idea that there's an elite few people who can afford to buy something very, very expensive that most of you can't have. I mean, maybe in years gone by, I think the craftsmanship was better. Maybe the clothes were, or the things were more beautifully made. Maybe, I mean, the whole idea of it's not very nice, but I suppose this sort of overflowingness of it now and the ubiquitous of it. It used to be something, as a young designer, I suppose, when I couldn't afford it, but I'd go and look at Prada. I've always liked Prada. I always thought it was really beautiful. I think Miuccia, is somebody whose aesthetic I really, really liked. I would have to go to Bond Street?
Bond Street, yeah.
I'd have to either go to Bond Street or Sloane Street. I could only see it in those two places, maybe in Harrods as well. I'd have to make a special journey to go and look at something. It was almost like going to a museum. And, everything has sort of become very ubiquitous now, hasn't it? Now, I don't know, is that a bad thing? I don't know what's luxury. I suppose luxury is really super individual to each of us, isn't it? What I would define as luxury would probably be different to you. Yeah.
However, that's not what we're being told.
Yeah.
But in those days, I mean, not to age either of us, Prada wasn't seen as a luxury brand. It was seen as fashion.
Yeah.
And we've seen this shift from what were, and still are in effect, fashion companies selling themselves as luxury product. So the couture might be the luxury because that is, there's a distinct element of craftsmanship and kind of knowledge, know-how, kind of implementation that you don't get elsewhere with a mass-produced product potentially. But I think there's a difference, and the history. You're absolutely right. I mean, it doesn't come from a great place. However, we can interpret the luxury element as something being attuned to craftsmanship, the skill of the worker, the materials, that knowledge that you don't find on mass production because you wouldn't be able to find that on a production line.
Well, and I suppose actually just listening to you and thinking about it, I think luxury should be something you keep, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Something you treasure, something that is precious to you personally in some way. And actually, that doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. That can be to do with all kinds of things. I mean, I do think luxury now is time.
Yeah.
I think luxury probably now is something that's very personal to you. Maybe something that is handmade to you, something that is unique in a world where everything has become very sort of ubiquitous and very mass-produced. But I think, yes, it's that relationship of things you keep. And if I look back to the second-hand market, one of the things I think is really interesting, I mean, I do track the amount of stuff that's on Vinted. So I think there are 97 million Zara items on Vinted when I looked yesterday.
Yeah, that's insane.
97 million. I mean, it's kind of mad. And there's about 87 million H&M, so I don't want to just single Zara out. No. But at the same time, if I go onto Vestiaire, there will be Louis Vuitton, new with tags, Prada, new with tags. I had a quick shimmy around Selfridges on the way here because I very rarely come into the West End, so I was kind of like, I'll have a little look.
Yeah.
But, I bet you I could find a lot of those clothes also on Vestiaire, new with tags or, worn twice.
Yeah.
And I think, for brands, or as a designer, for me, there's something really interesting about that sense that you're going to design something that somebody will only wear twice and then they won't want it anymore. And surely that is also the antithesis of luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just waste, surely.
Yeah, it's sort of like, there's somebody said to me, we consume clothes like take away coffees, like bag, another one. And that's not just at a fast fashion level, that's just everybody, everywhere. And I do find that really fascinating, really odd, really upsetting. I mean, what are the stats? Is it one lorry load of textile waste is landfilled every second?
Yeah. It's incredible and worrying.
Yeah.
I mean, because these people that are consuming, and it's at all levels.
Yeah.
It's not just luxury, but when you're spending, I mean, people spending $2,000 on a jumper, wearing it a couple of times, it then becomes a nothing. It's discarded. But worse than that, I think, is when you walk into a Prada store or a Louis Vuitton store or a Marks and Spencer's or Zara, and you see a rail, and there are 40 things on the rail. Maybe not in. Maybe Prada won't have 40 things, but they might have 20 shirts of the same in different sizes, in different colours. And you go into Marks and Spencer's, and there's 60, and those are 2 stores. And Prada have got hundreds of stores around the world, as have everybody else. The amount of stuff that's being produced that is not needed, where people could be buying, like you're saying, maybe a second-hand thing, or maybe just buying better and just keeping it longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I do remember when I was working at Karen Millen, it was quite an international company, so I did travel quite a lot to go and visit the stores, and I can remember actually a very vivid memory of being in Chicago, in a shopping mall in Chicago where we'd opened, and actually, honestly, we'd opened on the wrong floor, and it was very quiet, but we were sort of next to Banana Republic and the Gap, and there's other stores. And all of the stores were full of stuff. How Banana Republic and the Gap, they used to pile everything up. Exactly. So these stores are full of this stuff, and it's all piled up. They still are. And there was nobody, nobody in the shopping mall, apart from me and, the people working there. There was nobody in there. And I can remember actually almost physically having palpitations at that point, just thinking what on earth is going to happen to all this stuff? And, that's just one shopping mall. And I went to others on that same trip, and they were pretty much the same.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's wonderful. I mean, we were, as I mentioned to you, we were in New York last week, and we went into a J. Crew. I was just talking about J. Crew, Banana Republic, and the Gap, same company, and Blue Navy, I think it's called. And Old Navy, yeah. And the amount of stock with nobody in the shops. Yeah. There was nobody in Banana Republic. There was nobody in J. Crew. The Gap, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 people in there.
And I think in America, the average American buys about 70, either 68 or 75. I've seen both of those numbers, new items of clothing every single year. Wow. That is the average American.
And that's not even a lot. I know people, and you do know people who buy a lot more than that in a year.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, lots of my friends nowadays, they'll say to me, Gem, you'll be really pleased with me. I haven't bought anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't bought anything. I only bought this. It's second-hand, So I do think, I wonder, I live in hope that the conversation is starting to turn. Yeah. And I think people are starting to get a sense that this sort of overconsumption, who is this serving? Because I don't think it's serving us as consumers, this sort of constant sense of discontent. I mean, actually at the moment, we are living in a cost of living crisis, aren't we? I mean, prices of very basic things are going up extraordinarily, scarily actually.
Yeah,
I think.
Flour was 78p because I make bread every week. 78p is now £1.40 or £1.90.
That's really scary.
And that's cheap flour.
That's really scary. So we're living in this cost of living crisis. We are, and yet we're sort of being pushed to buy things that we don't. I suppose we don't really want, don't really need. To churn them. I mean, again, there was an amazing piece of research that London did, where they're sort of London's circularity champs, and they said that the average person in London, we're better than Americans, bought 48 new items of clothing a year and discarded, and that is either binned or donated to charity. Right. That's not resold or bought, nothing secondhand. 48 new items, and they put in the bin or gave to charity 44 items every year. So it sort of gives you this sense of how we are now churning through our wardrobes.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, I mean, the mind boggles because it's not only about fashion. I've only bought one thing this year. I've been thinking what I bought this year. One thing.
Better than me.
Yeah. But it's not only about fashion, it's about everything, and the kind of excess of consumption. Because what we also don't necessarily see, so I don't know if you've seen the Rob Report magazine, which is all about kind of super high-end everything, yachts, private planes, custom cars, fancy holidays, the new Belmond train, the new Four Seasons yacht, all of those things that the average consumer doesn't even have access to, but people are spending $20,000 on 2 nights on the Orient Express. I got a quote from one of those yacht companies. I wanted to know how much a 4-day Mediterranean cruise would be, and it was $16,000 a person. And those things, a lot of them are full.
Yeah.
The hotels are full. The yachts are, the holidays are sold out. More people are buying private planes.
Yeah, I mean, I find all that is all quite shocking. And again, that has happened in our lifetime, hasn't it? It has. I mean, my husband watches the Grand Prix. He's a big fan of Grand Prix. So it's one of the things we do together. And they were talking about Toto Wolff, who runs Mercedes, and they'd all flown in on Toto's private jet.
Yeah.
And you think, I don't remember those things being a thing, or you go to somewhere, you go to Mallorca and you sort of walk around and you look at the size of the boats and the number of boats there are in the harbours, and it's quite marked in the last 25, 26, maybe 30 years. Yes, as you're saying, the sort of scale of consumption. And then in very small ways where I live, I take photos of things that people put out on the street partly because I find it really annoying. But people are constantly, sort of churning through things in their house and, putting 2 lampshades, 10 books, a couple of pairs of shoes and something out on the street.
Right.
And I think there's this constant sort of churn, yes, of everything. So, yes, it's 44 clothes go and 2 lampshades, a kettle, a couple of coffee cups that I never really liked anyway that my mum bought me. And you're just constantly sort of churning through them, aren't you?
Yeah.
And that's become normal,
yeah. But in Amsterdam, I don't know if it's once a month or on a Tuesday, people put stuff out that they no longer want for other people to collect. And it's a common thing. And
I like that as an idea. And people say to me, isn't this a good thing? Yes, I sort of think it is. But then I think you have to be responsible for it. What tends to happen on my street, I'm sad to say, is people put it out, nobody takes it, because mostly it's probably not necessarily what you'd want.
Yeah.
And then they just leave it there.
Oh.
And then it rains.
Yeah.
A couple of dogs wee on it.
Yeah. That's not great.
Nobody wants, and then it's basically, it is rubbish, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to go to, it's going to go to landfill. It's just they don't want to take it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just pure laziness.
Where I think, because I love олио. Have you tried олио?
Yeah, no.
олио is a sharing app. So
I've got it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Right.
And I think that's great. I can post something on there that, because I suppose slowly I'm trying to sort of get, declutter. My life's changed quite a lot, so we don't need so much stuff, so you kind of start getting rid of things. But I can post it on there. Somebody comes and gets it. It's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Great.
Yeah, I've got a static bike if anybody wants it.
Post it on олио. I guarantee somebody will come round in moments.
Yeah. So Anya Hindmarch said that the most effective way to get people to change their consumption habits, is to take them to landfill. Have you been to a landfill site?
I haven't been to a landfill, but I've been to several recycling sites. Right. I did go last year, Veolia.
Right.
Who do all of the recycling in London. I had an open day at their recycling plant in South London. And this is my life nowadays. I used to pop to Selfridges and have a little look around. And I'm like, oh, hey, great, recycling day. I'm going to go and have a look. And I have to say it was mobbed. I queued for probably 2.5 hours. Wow. Some people behind me didn't even get in to go and have a look around. We always put hard hats and ear defenders and safety glasses on, and they walked you around. Oh my God, everybody should go and do that. I actually went home and I was traumatized. I said to Viv, I can't speak to you. I need to go and have a bath. I need to go and lie down somewhere quiet. The scale of this place was mind-blowing. It's very, very automated. And it was the recycling bit. So it's the green bags that we sort.
Yeah.
It's It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's huge. There's conveyor belts everywhere, and all this stuff is kind of getting, the green bags just get ripped up on a conveyor belt, and stuff's falling off it, and it really properly dystopian. And at the end of it, actually, not very much of it is actually recycled, is it? I mean, I do the big plastic count, which again is a brilliant thing if you haven't looked at it. But I think they said 16% of all our plastic is actually recycled.
Yeah.
In the end,
which is quite shocking. Yeah, and there was I was watching there was a thing on Netflix. I don't know how new or how old it is, and one of the experts was saying no plastic is actually recycled.
Did you watch the plastic? Did you watch Plastic Detox?
Yeah, that was it. Maybe.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's terrifying.
It's terrifying, and this idea that it's okay. You know, none of this stuff is okay. We're making stuff that will never go away.
Yeah.
More and more and more of it, and. Yeah, and then also, I think what was interesting actually, so I went to see that big recycling place. It terrified me, it really upset me. And then I went to see a very small family-run recycling business who do all of the recycling for boots. I mean, I love Boots, my local Boots. They've got boxers. I can put any kind of cosmetics, blister packs, because more plastic, blister packs, all of those things, and they'll recycle them. And I knew somebody who knew this company, and they said, come and have a look. And the thing that you realise when you go there and see is just how hard things are to recycle. Because hard plastic can't be recycled like soft plastic. And glass and plastic, if you look at the cosmetic industry, which I think is another industry that really needs a long, hard look, a perfume bottle might be made of glass with a bit of metal, with a bit of plastic, with something. I can't take it apart. I can't clean it to send it for recycling. It can't be recycled as it is. Why aren't we at least moving on to designed packaging that can be refilled and recycled, knowing everything we know? Yeah. I find that slightly incomprehensible.
I don't know. I'm smiling because my mother uses Augustinus Bader, and I took one of those things apart. I think there were 14 components, layers and layers and layers of plastic. For what?
Yeah. Well, so it looks nice, but I feel like maybe now more and more of us are moving beyond that conversation, you know. I don't care so much how it looks. I would like to know that can be easily cleaned out, that I can use all of it, and that somebody can recycle it.
Yeah. What more do you want?
And, you know, if it looks, you know, if it's a nice shape, great, but why can't that be the sort of design challenge? And I think, you know, for you, Sean, as an educator, one of the things, again, I think about is, we do need to rethink design training so that we are talking to young designers coming through and really educating them to think differently, because I just don't see that coming through as much as maybe I would like.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a valid point. But I think that is slightly changing. But education, I think, is the slowest to change, and it should be the fastest to change. Yeah. But for some reason, things seem to take a bit more time for it to infiltrate the student population. But it is important that, you know, those design challenges start with the students. And they start looking and addressing issues around, you know, the impact that all of the actions that we are taking is going to have on them and their kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, nobody else seems to be doing it, or very few people, not nobody.
Yeah, and somebody said something really interesting to me last week. They said, you know, you have to think about, because I like to go and talk to students. I like to go and talk to them about kind of my career, what's changed in my career. Because I also, when I'm going slightly off track, but bear with me and remind me to come back to where we were. When I was in my MA, what I realised was most of the people were significantly younger than me. And I realised they sort of see the fashion industry as it is today as this intractable thing. You know, they think it's always been like this. They think it's always been like fast fashion. You know, it can't possibly change because this is how it is. And I went, no. When I started working, textile industry here in the UK, manufacturing, fashion and textiles was the fourth biggest manufacturing industry in the UK. It employed millions of people. My first job was Marks and Spencer's. It was amazing. I went to dyeing mills, you know, spinning mills, dyeing plants. I could trace, you know, British wool all the way through into the jumper in Marks and Spencer's. I got to see it being knitted. It was huge. And that's gone. And, you know, the other significant change again, I'm my husband thinks I harp on about mobile phones a lot, and I
Yeah.
do. But the other significant change is, if you'd have said to me, Gem, you'll be able to sit on the bus, buy secondhand stuff from somebody in America on your phone on the way home.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it will be delivered potentially. Oh no, not from America. But if you bought it here,
tomorrow.
it could be delivered all the same day.
Yeah, it's so very, very different, and I really think it's important for students to realise, and people coming into the industry to realise, that it doesn't have to stay this way. This trajectory that we're on at the moment can completely change and become something else. And I think it's important that they have that sense, and it doesn't have to be for the bad. The narrative is that it's just things are getting worse and worse and worse and more and more and more. It doesn't have to stay like that. Things can change really radically in all sorts of ways that you might not expect now. And where I was going to go back to, that I thought was interesting, this person said to me, you have to think, Gem, that the people who will be in charge of, say, I don't want to single Marks and Spencer's out, but, they use them as a term. People in charge of Marks and Spencer's in 20, 30 years' time will have been educated now.
Yeah.
And they will have grown up with this awareness of the climate, awareness of sustainability, awareness of things being different. They may make very, very different decisions from the people who are in charge now. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that gives me hope is that you might start to have this kind of changing power balance of people who are looking at the world through a different lens.
Yeah.
Starting to be in charge.
Yeah, I mean, we could hope.
Yeah, I live in hope.
Yeah, we live in hope. Yeah, me too. I wanted to ask you about so the luxury brand market, the profitability, kind of the costings of their items. So, I mean, Chanel's the perfect example because it's always in the press. Just in terms of since 2019, a bag has gone from £5,000 to £11,000. That's not what I want to ask you about, but it's related. There's a huge market in dupes.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't know if you want to call them fakes or copies or whatever's. And it's not only coming out of China, but also so other stores would be copying, whether it's Zara or Marks and Spencer's or whoever, copying, I don't know, other brands. Does it matter if you're buying a copy item that is a Chanel bag, for example, from somebody that's not Chanel, making it with the same materials, in the same way, with the same quality hardware, hand, if it's hand stitched, doesn't matter if you buy that. No waiting list. I went into Chanel in Miami to ask about the new maxi, whatever it is that is their new summer bag from 𝐔𝐞𝐚𝐫𝐧, sold out. But does it make a difference if you buy it from one of those companies who are manufacturing it at not cheap, because they would probably be still £1,000, for example, but rather than, I don't know, £8,000 or £7,000.
Oh, it's a complicated question, that one, isn't it?
It is a
I mean, I think fakes is a really tricky issue, isn't it? Because I think the fake industry, I can't remember how much, it's 500 billion is the number that comes. I mean, the fake industry is huge. And it isn't just handbags that are being faked.
No, it's, absolutely. Everything.
Soap powder, medicine, all kinds of things. Yeah. I think probably now, I didn't used to necessarily think this. I have, in my day bought the odd fake something from Lady Market in Hong Kong because everybody did. But I think you have to ask yourself, if you're buying something that is a fake, are the people that made that being paid ethically? I know they could say, yes, it's the same factories, it's the same materials, but it is, in the end, an organised crime industry, I think, the fake industry. And I think we have to all be very careful to say, who do I want? I mean, I love you had Patrick Grant on here, didn't you? I mean, the thing that I took away from his book, Less, was really, who do I want to support with my money? If I'm going to spend money, who do I want that money to go to? So I go to my local shops now. I'm very careful about, where do I go? And I think, the thing about fakes is, where is that money going? Because that money is not going to pay workers a decent wage.
Yeah.
I think if you're buying a high street version of something, you know, that's been going on forever. If it's a price point that you can afford, a quality that you like and you love it, fair dues. I think they're kind of different, and the high street version will be a version. It won't be masquerading as the real thing. And I think if you could afford the Chanel bag, think very carefully, because maybe that should be like the one bag that, you know, will you love that forever? Because one other thought I quite often I wish somebody said to me when I was young, was basically, I didn't used to be able to afford to buy the thing. So I would buy the version of the, you know, the nice version of the thing, or I might buy the thing in the sale in the wrong size and the wrong colour, but, you know, because I could just about get it. I wish somebody had said to me, don't do that. You know, just buy the one thing that you really, you know, save up, buy the one thing you really want and keep it, because all those other things probably won't have the resonance for you.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, I shouldn't have bought, you know, they're not the things that I keep.
Sure. Okay, so you've now got the Craftsman, who's making an identical, well, nearly identical bag to the Chanel bag. It's not the Chanel bag, but it looks like that.
Well, I think if it's a Craftsman making something and you can see that person, you know, that person is being paid fairly, you like what they're making and you're paying them directly, then again, to me, probably why not? I mean, and actually maybe better, because maybe the money's going to that person directly.
Yeah, because there are lots of these, I suppose, things that I think about is that if you're buying, you know, if you're buying luxury, and I don't classify Chanel as luxury. I mean, it's a great product, but, you know, I would classify the craftsperson who I went to, like a tailor. You know, going to the tailor, that to me is a luxury experience, because you're working with somebody who understands your body, who's cutting the thing to form, and all of that to me is more of a luxury product, which of course is I mean, there's an element of exclusivity because not everybody can afford that.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I don't know where you'd find that craftsperson actually, because yes, it would be lovely. And you know, there are some independent bag makers in East London who I'm thinking about sort of people like Mimi Berry, maybe Kate Sheridan, who actually are making very nice leather bags that are very, you know, I mean, certainly compared to Chanel, like extremely reasonably priced, you know, nicely crafted with sustainable and ethical values. So yes, I think if you can find those people, I mean, better to support them than an advertising machine, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's also part of, you know, we're talking about where this all, the In Pursuit of Luxury came from. And part of it is exactly that, is how do we support those people who are the true makers and designers, purveyors of luxury goods and services. How do we support those? Because those machines, the luxury, the marketing machines, are so consumed with profitability, awareness and presence that the other guys just don't have the space to function, because people are too consumed with, it's like I mentioned to somebody who was buying a super expensive watch. I said, why don't you just go to Roger W. Smith? He only makes 10 a year, same sort of price. Oh no, because it doesn't have the luxury brand. And people are so drawn in to buying, I don't know, Loewe or Chanel or Prada or whatever, where you could get just the same thing. And this is the mindset thing. How do you change people's minds to value, you know, not buying as much, but buying. Well, I suppose it's the
visibility thing as well, isn't it? Because I mean, as I'm sitting here and listening to you, I'm thinking, like, how would you find those people? Where the other people, the big brand, you know, the big brands are all over the place. And when we were doing Label Mits, you know, one of the things that really struck me is everybody says, well, it's great because you can be online and, you know, you can therefore build your business. But as a small designer, you are so completely shouted out of the conversation by huge marketing budgets, aren't you? And as a craftsperson, probably, I mean, maybe not, you know, maybe even more so, because you maybe are less interested in the marketing side of it and you're more interested in the making. But I think that's again why it's about asking yourselves questions, isn't it? And, you know, so who do I want to support? And if I wanted to buy one bag, you know, where would I want to go and buy? Who would I want to buy it from? Who would I want to support in buying that? and sort of taking the time to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what, I mean, for me, that's the important bit of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is focusing on that. What is the biggest change you'd like to see, just in terms of this, the consuming market?
I think, I think it's all about less, isn't it? Generally, I mean, and I'm aware that's a really, really privileged thing to say. We're sitting here in somewhere very, very beautiful in London.
Yeah.
I definitely, there's nothing I need. And I think very many of us, in the global north, there's not much that we really, really need. But I think it's about reframing consumption and focusing, I guess, on, finding enough, like knowing what enough is, and, knowing when to stop, and maybe enjoying the things that we have a bit more. And I think the challenge for an industry like the fashion industry, which is absolutely predicated on growth, it's not even predicated on standing still. It's all about the competition, isn't it? Which brand is growing, which one's the newest, which is the hottest, which one's selling more. How do we start to think about and imagine a fashion industry that maybe isn't predicated on growth?
Yeah.
Maybe a fashion industry that is, starts to slow down. I mean, and then what would that be like? How would that, I think we need to think about how would that work?
And what is enough? I mean, enough is the title of your next book.
I don't think so. I think, really brilliant people. Patrick's written a book about less, hasn't he? And Anna Kilpatrick's written a book about the joy of enough. There are lots of people doing that. But I think it is interesting, isn't it? What is enough? And in a world where you're constantly being told that you need things, you are constantly being told that you need things. How do you sort of separate yourself from that and say, well, I don't need an air fryer, and I don't need the latest this or the latest that or this gadget or that. I don't need that. My life is fine as it is.
Yeah. And making do with what
enjoying what you've got, because actually most of, again, it's fascinating, isn't it? Everything's got bigger. Tellies have got bigger.
Yeah.
Cars.
Yeah, bigger.
Huge.
Yeah.
Everything's huge now. So you're like, oh, my car's too small, my TV is too small, my this is too small. Yeah, how can you just say, well, that's fine for me?
Yeah.
Actually, I like that.
Yeah.
I don't like big tellies anyway, so I'm kind of lucky. It's not so great for Viv, but...
But even flying.
Yeah.
I mean, even, if you're going in, first class is first business premium are overtaking in coach or economy, because more people are looking at those different experiences, and in first class there's more space. So now, I can't remember if it's Singapore or Qatar Air, you basically getting your own complete room with a bathroom, toilet, bed, and it's all self-contained. So you don't actually have to engage with any of the other passengers. So, which is fine. But the excess, things are becoming so extreme.
Yeah. Well, and also all of that has an environmental impact, doesn't it? So sort of looping back, flying business class is less sustainable. I try not to fly as much as I can, which means I have some really interesting adventures getting trains all over the place. But, I think... I can't remember what the stats are, but your carbon footprint is significantly higher business class to normal. But then if you've got your own room,
it's 6 times more impact, because you're taking up the space of probably 4, 8, 12, maybe 20 seats.
Well, there you go. So it's 20 times more.
20 times more.
And I don't know as well. Once you start, maybe. Well, I would like us. I suppose the interesting thing is I'd like us all to be just that bit more aware of the sort of impact that we're having. Because the thing that terrifies me is I don't want to spend, I don't know where we are on time, but I don't want to be sort of too down about it. But, where are we heading with all of this?
Yeah.
What are we doing to this extraordinarily beautiful planet that we depend on?
Yeah. No, and that's exactly the point. It's like, we genuinely are privileged, which is, you've said. We don't really need more, but we typically buy more.
Yeah.
Because we are told to buy more. Or even, with us, we work, and a lot of our friends are in that environment. So they, typically buy more.
Yeah,
A lot of them,
absolutely, yeah.
typically buy more than they would need.
Yeah.
And even with food, just throwing food out. I mean, that's one of my pet hates.
Me too.
Is people wasting food. It's like, people just will. You finish a meal, there's still food left, and they'll just chuck it in the bin. And it's like, but why would you do that? There's nothing wrong with that food.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you follow the food waste inspector on Instagram? You should follow him.
Right,
because actually the scale of waste, he photographs the supermarkets after they've shut and the stuff they throw out.
Oh, I don't even want to imagine that.
There are vats of, and but it's a third of all food is wasted, isn't it?
Yeah.
A third of all food produced is wasted. And if you could eliminate that, the impact in terms of, reducing carbon emissions, maybe being able to rewild vast tracts of the planet, it would be huge. And actually I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? How have we normalised in the world that it's perfectly okay to throw away a third of the food that we produce? Yeah. How have we normalised that, people like Amazon will say, I get these returned computers. Was a scandal, wasn't there, in COVID? They got computers returned to them, and they said, well, it's cheaper to destroy them than it is to reprocess the returns. Yeah. And I think it was the BBC followed this ban and showed them destroying it all. How have we got to a place where it is okay to just throw away perfectly good stuff? And that's again in our lifetimes, because I think about my grandparents a lot. My grandparents would not believe that was possible, that people would do that. Yeah.
Well, my mother keeps everything. But those are war children, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is that you don't throw anything away.
I am going back to that myself now. I sort of, if I get something, it comes in a plastic bag. I keep the plastic bag. I think that'll be useful.
Yeah. And then you can have loads of plastic bags. My mother's got loads of rubber bands.
Yeah,
So if you need to,
Oh, I've got my own.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but exactly. I mean, how have we got to this point where it has become acceptable to waste so much?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
so I would like
weird...
less waste.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really good place to start. And I think, looping back to the conversation, the bag that you buy that you use twice and sell next year.
Yeah.
That's that's a waste, isn't it? I mean, it's a waste of your money, if nothing else.
Yeah. But I'm sure you've seen this Trader Joe's thing. Have you seen people carrying these Trader Joe's shopping tote bags?
Maybe.
So Trader Joe's in America, supermarket, and what's happened, I don't know if it's about 2 years, people have gone insane for these Trader Joe bags. They've been selling them for 10 years, but all of a sudden, everybody wants a Trader Joe bags. They are like $2.99, but you can't find them for love or money. So I went into 2 Trader Joe's in New York to see if I could get one. Can't get one. But people are buying these things in the dozens, and they are selling tens of millions of these bags, which are meant to be reusable. They are, of course, reusable. Yeah. And then you think, but why? How has a shopping bag from a supermarket that's made of canvas become a thing that people are obsessed with?
Well, I suppose that is the nature of fashion, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the thing. And, I don't really look at sort of fashion trends anymore. But you can't help noticing them, can you? You can't help noticing that you'll see everybody wearing a particular kind of trainer or a particular something. You're like, oh, God, all these things are sort of going on. So I guess that is the fashion. But again, I suppose what you hope is all those people did actually need a bag. And will they still be using that bag next year?
Yeah.
How many of those bags will be in landfill or on Vinted for £1 next year? Well, we should track that, Sean.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Let's look next year and let's say, how many of those bags can we find? Could you buy next year for nothing?
Because you can buy them on eBay.
Right, but are they at an inflated price?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Those things fascinate me. Yeah. Is how things that are so kind of irrelevant become relevant. In the world where you don't actually need another 2 bags and in different colours because they now produce them in different colours. So they've got a green one and a blue one and a lavender one and a...
Well, there's lots of interesting sort of feeds as well on Instagram, sort of from America, of people, and they sort of open up their bathroom cupboard and they've got the lipstick in every, it looks like Selfridges display market. Well, what were those cups that everybody had a couple of years ago?
The Stanley. Yeah.
And they've got, sort of shelves.
Yeah. And when did that become a thing? That you have to carry water around with you because you can just go to the tap?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and plastic bottles of water, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it, again?
Okay, so now I want to ask you about unboxing, just because you mentioned opening a cabinet. You must have seen on Instagram or on YouTube or wherever that people do an unboxing thing. They buy a bag and then they unbox it. What is that?
I haven't seen that actually, but I have heard about it.
Yeah.
Well, I get, in a way, I kind of get the thrill, like years ago, if you do buy something and there is an emotion, isn't there? If you save up and if you sort of cast your mind back and you sort of save up and you buy something really beautiful, the first time I ever bought something from Gucci, okay? I bought something in the 90s. I bought it in Italy because it was lira and it was cheaper.
Right.
And I still have the shoes in the box, in the bag that I got them in, because that whole experience of walking out of Gucci, owning a pair of those shoes, in that bag, in that box, to me that was like a magical experience. And it meant so much that they have travelled with me through many moves in my life, exactly as they were. Can't walk in them, never could, but anyway. So I think there's something about, the appreciation, and it's so bloody complicated, all this stuff, isn't it? Because then I don't like the idea that there's packaging is wasteful.
Yeah.
And, addictive to have all of those things. But
why show it to the world? That's
status, I suppose, is it?
I don't know. I find so much of this stuff so weird.
What I don't get, actually, and I haven't really watched it, is why would you want to watch somebody else unboxing anything?
Well, exactly.
Because, what is the point of that? It's not yours.
No.
What they go, it's lovely cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great, well, thanks. Yeah, I'm just sitting here watching you on my phone.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't understand that. No. I can sort of understand the emotion attached to sort of the... Yeah. There's something about how something arrives. Apple know that, don't they? That's why all of that packaging is so very, very, very beautifully considered, You feel like you're the present.
But Deepak Chopra said that the immediacy of the emotion when you kind of, I don't know, if you win the lottery or something like that, has a temporary, it's also temporary, and that your kind of emotive state returns to where it was pretty quickly, which is what happens with shopping.
Absolutely.
Or anything.
Yeah.
So that, that unpackaging, lasts for 5 minutes, and that's why you go out and buy the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there's something interesting about that as well, though, that over time you can sort of reconnect with things on a deeper level, if that makes sense. So you have that first moment, don't you, with something where it's like it's amazing. Goodness, especially if you really wanted it, you sort of like, because I think the trouble as well is now online shopping a lot of the time we're not invested in any of it, are we? I bought a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. Right, see, I bought it from Vinted. It came in a black plastic bin bag that somebody wrapped up really badly, so I have no emotion about the thing at all. But I think that sort of, you can reacquaint yourself with things as well. Yeah. So the more you use them and the longer you know them, they can become kind of more favourites. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that a luxury thing? Could it be?
I think it could be, yeah. I think it could be. And I think there's a sort of emotional investment, isn't there, in things, and things then start to become you. My dad bought me this ring in the 1990s and I've been wearing it ever since. I have a tan line around the ring that is sort of permanent, and that's become me, really. Yeah. If I don't wear it, my hand doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Well, that's a luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's an emotional... I think it's an emotional connection. And I suppose for me, again, the thing that I think's gone from fashion is the emotional connection, and that's what makes me sad. Yeah. I think feeling I think as a designer, you want people to feel emotionally connected to the things you're creating. And I did used to love that in Karen Millen. You'd watch people trying the clothes on and they go, oh, look at me, and they'd be like, oh, that feels so good. And you want to make people, you're doing it because you want to kind of create an emotional response in people. Yeah. And I think that's a luxury thing again, isn't it? You know, that's sort of the emotional response, but you want it to be a sort of longer lasting relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Rather than just transactional.
Yeah.
What do you think the role of government is in all of this? And are they doing anything in your mind to address some of these issues?
I don't think they're doing anywhere nearly enough. I don't think they're brave enough. I also think fashion sort of gets left under the radar because I think people think it's kind of women's stuff. You know,
Right.
if you look at, I'm really interested in sustainable transitions research, and I think people are looking at agriculture, they look at construction, transport, you know, like big masculine kind of things,
Yeah.
but fashion. I mean, it's, you know, it's up to, if you believe the EU research, it's 10% of all carbon emissions globally, so it's not insignificant.
Right.
I think the government should definitely bring in EPR legislation. I think it should be more than they're talking about now. There was a great piece of research that a company called 𝐓𝐡𝐢 did about, you know, would we be prepared to pay for EPR legislation? They talked about eco-modulated EPR legislation, which would mean that something that was made from 100% cotton might have and could be recycled, and was designed to be recycled, might have less tax. I mean, I think that would maybe sort the beauty industry out as well. You know, if you had to pay because your packaging had 47 components and most of them couldn't be recycled, maybe you design it differently.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my research, most people I spoke to said the only way the fashion industry will change is if there's legislation.
Like in France.
Yeah.
And I wonder what impact that will have, the French.
Well, there was an interesting, sorry, my world's full of interesting research.
no,
there was
that's good.
there was an interesting piece of research that
We love
said
interesting research.
that French consumers are in Europe about the only consumers that are more or less consuming at a sort of sustainable level in fashion. So they are obviously already consuming differently. Now, they may consume differently, it may be cultural. It might be a little bit in part to do with the legislation as well. I mean, interestingly, Vinted is now the biggest clothing retailer in France.
Oh, amazing.
I don't know if they buy better quality, but yeah, I think France are doing the repair thing, aren't they? Subsidising repairs.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely think there's a lot more the government could and should be doing, but I do get they've got a lot on their minds.
Yeah, especially now. On that note.
Yeah.
We'll end, as I always do, by asking you, what is your luxury?
I think time. I think time to, well, I mean, I am incredibly lucky to be able to study at my stage in life, and I am really enjoying the experience of being able to learn. But I think the time to think, I think time is, you know, maybe that's a getting older thing. I think as you get older, you know, time is incredibly precious, actually. And taking your time in a world that doesn't really want you to is probably a luxury.
Great. Gemma Metheringham, thank you very much for our amazing chat.
Oh, thank you. It's been great fun, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Gemma for joining us. I'd like to thank you for listening. And don't forget to please subscribe and, of course, catch up on all previous episodes of the In Pursuit of Luxury podcast on your favourite listening platform.